The way into the courtroom right now.
These are the plaintiffs, Mary Jo Draper and Robert Bradler. Mary Jo says she hired the defendant to restain some doors and trim in her condo to prepare it for sale. The job looked good to her, but she is visually impaired and her husband is blind, and her realtor told her there were big problems. The defendant came out to take a look, said no problem, and then jumped in his truck and took off in a cloud of dust. She had to lower her selling price, and the defendant is wholly responsible. They're suing for $5,265.47. The amount they're out. This is the defendant, Mark Schmitz. He warned the plaintiffs the doors were old and had been dried out and exposed to the harsh Colorado climate, and told her he could make them look better, but there would be no guarantee on the work. She told him they didn't care because they were selling, and now he's being painted as the big bad guy who takes advantage of the blind. He's accused of being a drip.
All parties, please raise your right hands. Here's the deal. One of the plaintiffs is visually impaired and the other is blind. They end up paying this guy and they say the job was a disaster, and he says this is just buyer's remorse. It's the case of blind justice.
Thank you, Douglas.
You're welcome.
Okay, Mary Jo Draper and Robert Bradler, you are suing Mark Schmitz and Gem Coating Company Incorporated. Mark Schmitz is here. You're the owner, correct?
Yes.
For $5,265.47. The cost to replace, install, and stain new doors, and a return of the amount of money that you paid to him to stain those doors, which you say are the reason why you had to replace the doors, etc. All right, tell me what happened here, Ms. Draper.
We contracted with Mark Schmitz to stain and varnish the doors in our condo. We'd replace them, and we were told that in order to either sell it or rent it, we would need to stain and varnish to protect those doors. And we agreed.
Were those doors just raw wood?
Yes, they had plastic on them, though.
What's plastic?
Well, they're shrink wrapped when you buy them and have them installed.
How long had they been?
They had been in the condo for probably 3.5 to 4 years.
Were you living in the condo?
I was living in there 1 year of that time.
With shrink wrap plastic on the doors?
Yes.
For real?
Yes.
Okay. So you decide to sell the condo and you figure out that the next person may not be into your whole shrink wrap motif design.
Right. And we had a property manager that we were going through that we were consulting with to rent the property if we went that option. And she suggested Mark Schmitz. And so I talked to him on the phone and through email and contracted with him to do the doors. And so we went over to the condo. He looked at them. He did say they were, they had been in there a while, and they would need, that the stain might not be even as a result, especially where there was apparently a label on the door.
Oh, you never took the labels off?
No, because they're under the shrink wrap. I didn't take the shrink wrap off because
so his premise was that some ultraviolet rays might get in anyway, and make the door a little darker everywhere except where there was a sticker.
Right.
Okay.
Right. And he said, okay, and we agreed on everything, and then he started staining the doors.
And everything was that for $570 he was going to do all the staining.
Yes.
All right. So when it's all said and done, do you pay him?
Yes.
And you paid him why?
Because I thought they looked fine. But because, like I said, I'm visually impaired.
How are you visually impaired?
I'm legally blind from diabetes.
Oh, okay. I guess what I meant was how visually impaired are you is what I meant.
I'm legally blind. I don't know. I think my vision's around 20 to 600, 800.
Okay. Obviously you get around, and obviously you felt that you had sufficient visual acumen to go over the job, and if you don't, why did you? In other words, maybe you're not the best person to really give it the once over, if you know what I mean. No offense. Maybe the realtor should have been the one to give it the once over.
You're right, and I should have done that. That was my error.
But
I should have, but I trusted him.
You obviously felt like you could see the job, and you looked it over, it looked fine to you. All right, now.
But I trusted him to do that.
Oh, that's just silly, with all due respect.
It's having trust in a person silly.
You don't know this guy. You don't know him. You have no. First of all, you don't know him, and if you did know him, you wouldn't trust him. No, that's not personal. Okay? You protect yourself so that you don't end up as a litigant in court. You don't pay a contractor the entire amount of a contract until they're done with the entire amount of the job and you're satisfied with it. Okay? You don't decide you're satisfied if you're legally blind. You get somebody else decide if you are satisfied. All right? Those are just things that, you know, make sense, right? Okay? So in any event, the first inkling that you have that things are not, you know, as fine as you thought they were is when your real estate agent comes over?
Right. We got an offer on the condo.
After this?
Yes. When it was contingent on the doors being completed, and then the realtor went over to look at the doors upon completion, and he said, Mary Jo, I have a major problem here. And then he explained to me that there was some dripping of the varnish, there was some dripping of it onto the wallpaper, and there was dripping of the stain, and there was bubbling of the varnish.
So does your realtor contact him?
Yes.
And does he come over and try to make some repairs?
Yes. According to the realtor, he said, you know, no problem, I'll get to this work immediately. And he went out to his truck to get supplies and never came back.
Really? He fled?
Well,
he just sort of fled the meeting? He just fled?
No. Apparently
what
it was
happened?
like, you know, fled the scene.
What happened?
I was there after I met with the realtor. I was cleaning that off the walls. There were some areas where I couldn't reach, where the trim was off the wall by, you know, maybe a quarter of an inch. That could have been, you know, covered up if somebody would come through and caulk the trim to the walls. But when I met with the realtor, I told him that, you know, basically that I didn't give a guarantee to Miss Draper, or that I couldn't warrant my work.
So what did you do? When you met with the realtor, what did you fix? Just the two things you said? That's it?
Yeah, I cleaned up all the stain
And you said, I told Mary Jo that I wasn't warranting my work?
Yeah.
Do you have the pictures of his work?
Yes, I do.
May I see them? And the reason you weren't warranting your work against what? What do you mean?
I couldn't warranty or guarantee my work how it would turn out. One, because the wood on the trim was really dry, really light compared to what it looked like against the doors. And then just the discoloration of the doors.
So when you say you can't warrant, you couldn't warrant that the color would be uniform.
And even the finish, just because, you know, she had told me that the doors were maybe a year and a half old. But with the wood drying out, you know, I can't guarantee, even doing all the prep work, how the stain's going to take to the wood. I mean, I've been painting for 20 years.
Which would mean what? That the stain would be what? Uneven.
The stain's uneven.
Okay, but when she shows me pictures like this, which show that you left the job with stain all over the glass, okay? With wait a minute, with dripping varnish, okay? With dripping varnish here, with blotched varnish, with dripping stains from your varnish, with bubbling varnish. That has absolutely nothing to do with the age of the wood. That's just you doing a sloppy job.
No, it depends on how well the wood's going to take the stain.
What are you talking about? That thing's bubbling because there's too much of it there. You wipe it. You just do a better job.
You brush it and lay it off, but sometimes it'll dry too fast, it'll bubble, and it'll get cloudy.
Now.
Looks like the defendant has some serious wood issues. Will the plaintiff get more than $5 grand? Judge Millie on Rules, next.
One in that short period.
So, do you think that these people didn't do the right thing by paying him without anybody looking at the job?
Well, maybe they didn't have one in that short period of time, but if there's flaws in the work, he's got to stand behind his work. That's his reputation.
Period.
Yes.
Okay, going inside the courtrum.
I can understand that you can say to her, look, I cannot warrant that it's all going to be uniform because you guys, come on, man. You brought this wood in here. It's now 3 years old, and you've had labels on it, so there's 2 different colors. Then you have these. I can totally understand that. If they were coming in here complaining about that, be one thing. But you leave a job site like that for somebody else to clean up your mess, and then you leave, just a second, I'm not done. You leave bubbling varnish, which is completely your responsibility to make sure is even, but you're just slapping it on haphazardly, and then there's drips everywhere. That has absolutely nothing to do with whether the wood is absorbing it. You just do it more slowly and more carefully. I mean, that's just, I've done a lot of construction in my house, all right? There's no reason for this. It has nothing to do with the age of the wood. How many places we have dripping, bubbling varnish accumulating because you're busy going like this and then getting your money and then, you have the good fortune that the person doing the once over can't really see this closely to see this stuff. What ended up happening?
Well, the girl made an offer on the condo, but was really disappointed when she saw what happened to the doors. And in trying to work this all out with the realtors, et cetera, it was decided that we needed to replace the doors. First, we
Doors,
checked
door jams, everything?
everything. We checked.
And you think he's going to pay for that?
Well, the reason being is that we checked into having them sanded and redone. They said, well, there's two problems. One is that it really can't be done well, and they would lose the quality of the wood quality, grain, et cetera, if they were painted. So they said you had to replace the doors, which includes the jams, I guess, that they come in, and then the moldings, because they had the drips as well.
Okay, that's not, let me just tell you something. Just like I just told him, I've done a lot of construction. I'm the daughter of a contractor, the sister of a contractor, remodeled several homes. That doesn't make any sense either, okay? Somebody can go in there, sand this thing down. According to you, they've never been painted before. There's not layers in it. What do you think, that you can't sand a door ever and change the stain or something? That's just silly. But you're entitled when you come to court to be made whole for the wrong that occurred. You picked the cheapest method under the sun to fix your doors, and it didn't work out. You're entitled to be made whole for that wrong. You're not entitled now to, for the cheapest price possible, get brand new doors and windows paid for by the cheap guy who didn't do the cheap job right.
Don't I have a right to get my damages repaired?
Yes, and the argument you and I are having are what your damages are. Your measure of damages, the real true measure of your damages is this. It's him returning the money because he didn't do a good job, plus me adding to that whatever I believe it would cost to have somebody sand down the bubbled areas that he did. That's your measure of damages in this case. And I find, therefore, that I'm going to award you, in this case, the $570 returned back, plus an additional $300 for the labor involved, that if you would have chosen to do it that way to make yourself whole. But I will not be ordering what you've requested, which is a whole new way of making the place a better place for the people who were coming in and then making him pay for it. $870 is my verdict. Verdict for the plaintiff.
All right, come on in here. So the plaintiff does collect not everything they wanted, but this is the loser in the case, the defendant. Your work didn't look that good on there, on those photos.
No, there's, you know, it's kind of the nature of the beast working with old wood and some water-based varnish.
It's the nature of the beast that you splash the varnish all over the windows?
Well, yeah, it happens.
Your best work?
It happens. No.
Okay. You didn't try to, you know, take advantage of their situation a little bit?
No. Sometimes you have a bad day.
Right down that way, okay? All right. So, well, you sued for $5,000, and you didn't get anywhere near that. So what's your feeling about the verdict here?
Well, I feel like I still needed to replace the doors in order to get the condo back to the state it was at. Mm-hmm. But I guess, you know, if she considered it fair, then we'll consider that a fair as well.
All right. Let's see what Harvey says outside the courtroom.
Okay, Kurt, here's the deal. Even if these plaintiffs were not prudent by getting somebody to come and look at the job before they ended up paying, the bottom line is, if they can prove that the job was substandard, it doesn't matter. They get their money back, and they did prove it. That will do it for this case. Litigants for the next case.